Welcome back, everyone. The story we're diving into today, it really gripped the world, didn't it? It's the OceanGate Titan submersible tragedy.
Yeah, it was a huge story.
We've got a ton of stuff you guys sent in, first-hand accounts, expert takes, even footage from inside the Titan itself. We're going to unpack it all. Summer 2023, remember? That desperate search, the hope fading with each passing hour.
Right.
This experimental sub, I mean, it was going to take 5 people all the way down to the Titanic.
Wow.
Vanished just hours after it started going down.
Unbelievable.
Later, they found out it imploded. It was just devastating. And it left everyone asking, why? What went wrong? What can we learn from this?
Yeah, it's just a terrible tragedy, like you said, that really grabbed everyone's attention. To really get what caused this whole thing, we have to look at the person behind it. Stockton Rush. He was the CEO of OceanGate.
Okay.
Ambitious guy, driven, really wanted to push the limits. He even said once, "You're remembered for the rules you break."
Ooh, knowing what happened, that's chilling to hear. From what we've seen, he was totally fascinated by exploration. At first, he wanted to go to space, but then he switched to the deep sea.
Right, and that led him to the Titan. Imagine this. You're going to see the Titanic, one of the most famous shipwrecks ever, thousands of feet underwater. You're in a submersible, but get this. They're steering it with a video game controller.
Hold on, a video game controller? Seriously, that's not exactly what I picture when I think about, like, high-tech, deep-sea exploration. What were they thinking?
That was all part of Rush's vision. He wanted to change how we explore the deep sea, make it easier to get to, and not so reliant on the traditional ways, which cost a fortune. But this unconventional approach, it went beyond just the controls.
Okay.
The Titan's hull, that's the part that's supposed to protect everyone inside from the insane pressure down there. It was made from carbon fiber.
Okay, so carbon fiber's strong, it's light, but wasn't there worry about using it in such an extreme place?
Definitely. And it gets even more concerning. This carbon fiber they used for the Titan wasn't even new. Rush bought it from Boeing at a discount. It was past its shelf life for airplanes. So basically, he built a submersible that had to handle enormous pressure, and he used, expired materials.
Using possibly bad material for a deep-sea submersible. Sounds like a huge red flag right from the get-go.
It was. And the warnings, they didn't stop there. OceanGate's own director of marine operations, David Lockridge, he raised some big concerns about the Titan.
Oh, wow.
Specifically about the viewport, the window they used to see the Titanic. It was only certified for a depth way shallower than what they needed to go down to. He ended up getting fired and even sued the company after he spoke up.
Wait, they fired their own safety guy for pointing out problems? That's unbelievable. And the viewport wasn't the only thing, was it? There was also the lack of proper testing on the hull itself.
That's right. A lot of people were worried that they didn't properly check the hull for weaknesses, things that could cause a total failure under all that pressure.
Right.
In fact, a major industry group, the Marine Technology Society, they sent a letter straight to OceanGate. They were worried that the Titan's experimental design could end in disaster.
So even with all these warnings from both inside and outside experts, Rush just kept going. It's hard to believe that they basically ignored all these red flags.
Rush had a very, very strong belief in his vision. He saw himself as an innovator, disrupting the industry, someone who wasn't bound by the usual ways of doing things. He saw those warnings as people trying to hold back progress. But as we know now, that way of thinking, it had a terrible cost.
It's wild to think they actually went ahead with the dive after all those warnings. The stuff you've sent in, it really gives you a sense of what happened on that day in June 2023.
Yeah, it's, the dive started with a lot of excitement, of course. 5 passengers, Stockton Rush included, they all boarded the Titan.
Right.
And it was launched from its support ship, the Polar Prince. For the first hour and 45 minutes, everything seemed okay, like it was going to plan. The Titan was talking to the Polar Prince, through text messages, giving them updates on how the descent was going.
And then silence. What happened after that? That's what everyone's been trying to figure out.
Exactly. The communication just stopped. And this is where things get really worrying. They waited 8 hours before they told the Coast Guard that the Titan was missing.
8 hours? That's a huge chunk of time when every second matters. Why did they wait so long to sound the alarm?
It's a big question. And the sources, they shed some light on it. Looks like OceanGate, they might have tried to fix the communication problem themselves at first.
Okay.
Maybe hoping they could avoid getting outside help involved.
So they tried to deal with it internally. Maybe they didn't realize how serious it was.
Yeah, could be. But with the oxygen they had on board, time was running out. The Titan, it only had enough oxygen for about 96 hours. So every minute they lost, it meant less chance of finding them alive. By the time they contacted the Coast Guard, the Titan was way overdue. They launched this massive search and rescue effort.
It was huge. The search for the Titan. What was it like? I mean, how big was the operation? What kind of challenges did they face?
It was a global effort, really. You had the U.S. and Canadian Coast Guard, military planes, sonar buoys, and remotely operated vehicles, all of them trying to find this tiny sub like the size of a small truck, thousands of feet down in the middle of the Atlantic. I mean, it's dark, the currents are unpredictable. It was a nightmare scenario.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. It must have been so intense for everyone involved. I remember the whole world was watching, hoping they'd find them alive.
There were moments, where it seemed like there was hope. Some people reported hearing banging sounds underwater,
Oh, right.
and that made everyone think maybe they're still alive, trying to signal for help.
But sadly, it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking. After days of searching, they found debris from the Titan. Near the Titanic wreck, it confirmed everyone's worst fears.
Right.
The submersible imploded. All 5 passengers, they were gone. It was just devastating news for everyone.
It was such a stark reminder of how powerful the ocean is and how dangerous it can be to explore those depths. And then the focus shifted. Everyone wanted to know what caused this implosion. What can you tell us about that?
Well, most experts think the main culprit was the Titan's carbon fiber hull. Remember all the worries about its strength, especially since they used old material and didn't do enough testing.
So those concerns, they turned out to be tragically true. The hull couldn't handle the pressure down there.
It seems that way. The pressure at that depth is immense, hundreds of times greater than at the surface. It probably found some weak spot in the carbon fiber, maybe a tiny crack, something they missed, or maybe because the material was old, it just gave way. And that would have caused this catastrophic implosion.
It's just awful to think that all those warnings about the hull were ignored. Were there any other ideas about what caused it? What about the viewport? It wasn't rated for that depth, right?
Yeah, the viewport, that was definitely a weak point too. But most experts think the implosion started with the hull. The problem is there's no black box or data recorders on the Titan.
Oh, right.
So we can't know for sure what happened in those final moments. All we have are educated guesses.
And to add to the tragedy, there's the question of recovering the passengers' remains.
Yeah, it's a really difficult situation. Given what happened, the implosion and the depth, it's a huge logistical and ethical challenge. I mean, getting anything from that far down is incredibly hard. It takes special equipment, expertise, and it's very expensive.
This whole story is just a tragic reminder of the risks of pushing the limits, especially in an environment like the deep ocean. But it also makes you think about how we approach innovation and exploration going forward, as a society. So we've really gone deep into this whole OceanGate story, the choices they made, the terrible outcome. It's a lot to process. But before we wrap up, you mentioned there's this bigger question for everyone listening to think about.
Yeah, the Titan, it makes us face this really fundamental question. Where do we draw the line, between pushing the boundaries of exploration and putting lives at risk for the sake of knowledge or even profit?
That's a tough one. No easy answers there. But the desire to explore, to see what's out there, it's a part of us, right? Throughout history, we've been pushing into new territories, climbing mountains, going to the moon. I mean, it's in our nature.
Right. And those explorations, even though they're risky, they've given us so much. They've advanced our knowledge, inspired people, shown us what's possible.
But the Titan, it's this harsh reminder that progress can't come at any cost. There's a difference between smart risks, where you have safety measures, and just being reckless, where warnings are ignored and people are put in danger.
Stockton Rush, with his whole idea of revolutionizing deep-sea exploration, it seems like he blurred that line. He ignored industry standards, didn't listen to experts, put speed and cost ahead of safety, and it led to those tragic deaths.
It makes you wonder, how do we make sure that this drive for knowledge and innovation, that it doesn't turn into reckless endangerment, especially when we're dealing with places like the deep sea or even outer space?
And it's not just about exploration either. We see this with AI, with genetic engineering, even new medicines. How do we balance the good that could come from these advancements with the potential harm, especially when lives are on the line?
Maybe it comes down to creating a culture of responsible innovation, where the rules are strong, there's real oversight, and people's safety comes first, always.
Exactly. We need a system where cutting corners is unacceptable, where safety protocols are followed strictly, and where transparency and accountability are just the norm.
The Titan tragedy, it's a huge lesson about finding that balance. We'll always want to explore, that's not going away, but we have to respect the power of nature and the value of human life.
The deep sea, it's full of mysteries. It's going to keep attracting explorers. But we have to move forward carefully, wisely, and responsibly. What happened with the Titan, it shouldn't stop innovation, but it should make us think more carefully, more ethically, and ultimately make exploration safer.
It's something we all need to remember as we keep pushing the limits of what's possible. The Titan, it reminds us that knowledge is important, but it should never cost human lives. This deep dive, it's been a look into innovation, ambition, and the consequences when risks aren't taken seriously. We hope it makes you think about these questions too. The ethics of exploration. How do we make sure that future discoveries are driven by both curiosity and responsibility? That's something we all have to grapple with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.